Look at how that comes apart. We'll have a couple of carrots. Put in a potato. Look at that. Look how good that looks. Isn't that nice? Welcome to Lawyer in the Kitchen. Today we're going to make classic corned beef and cabbage. If you're like me, you've wondered where in the world the term corned beef came from. As it turns out, in the 17th century, 1600s, England and Ireland, of course being very close to each other, they both had cattle, but the Irish ate mostly pork. Beef was kind of a wealthy dish for kings and things like that, and there were obviously cattle producers in England and cattle producers in Ireland, but the Irish cattle was pretty much for export. The cattle farmers didn't like the idea of all of this foreign beef coming into the country and having to compete with Ireland for it. So they passed a law saying that you cannot export live cattle into the United Kingdom anymore. The Irish, being smart, thought, well, we'll do it in a different way. They won't be alive. We'll actually salt cure with herbs, spices, and obviously salt, and we'll send that to England, and that'll come in there just fine. And the tax on salt was favorable to the Irish, so they used the salt. That is where the name comes from. The salt was big pieces in the shape and size of a corn kernel. So this brisket that is cured with salt became known as corned beef. With the exception of a little bit of maybe some unsalted butter and maybe some salt, depending on how this turns out at the end, and some pepper, I'm going to have just simply potatoes, onions, carrots, and cabbage. I'll have more cabbage in this. We're going to cook this about 4 hours. And when I take this out of the bag, I'm literally going to take every bit of the juice that is in here. I'm going to rinse the bag and put it in the pot, and I'm going to use the herbs and spices that are in the little packet, and we're going to use every bit of this, and we're going to cook this. We're going to simmer this for about 4 hours. All right, so we're going to cut the bag and let all that juice and then the corned beef go in there, because we want every bit of that. That's looking good. Finished filling this up. And that's about right there. Now we're going to just simmer this. And then we don't want to lose any of that. Dump all that in there. And then we're going to put her on the stove. We've got this going for a few minutes. Right now, it's boiling. We don't want to boil this. You got to cook this slowly. I'm going to add just a little more water, and then we're going to cover it because we don't want all that water coming out, all the evaporation. So this is going to go for about 3 hours, and then we're going to put in the potatoes and the carrots and the onions, and then we're going to wait to put the cabbage in for about the last 30-45 minutes. We are at the 3-hour mark, and now it's time to put in our vegetables. We're going to cut these in half, the potatoes. We're going to cut these into big chunks, the carrots, and big chunks on the onions, and then I'm going to probably do these in fairly good sized pieces as well, and I'm going to put in a stick of butter, because you know what? Butter does make it better. This thing's been cooking for 3 hours. Pull that off. That's perfect right there. Look at that. We don't need to add any more water to it, because it's got plenty, and we'll probably not really turn it up much. We're going to let this just cook for another hour. I'm going to chop these in pretty good chunks. Everybody has their own way of cutting onions, and I keep changing my way. You know, I watch other people cook, and I go, "Oh, I kind of like that," and I might do that. And then I kind of like that in half, because it is easy to grab the skin. All right, so we've got this. We want these in pretty good pieces, like 3s on the half, so like 6 altogether for an entire onion. Because the cabbage is going to be pretty big. All right, so we are ready to put this in. Potatoes we're just going to cut in half. Of course, this is going to add a ton of flavor. Nice big pieces like this. And they'll look great. And I'm actually going to wait to put the other in because I want to have the picture look a little greener, even though I probably would cook this longer because I like this stuff cooked to death. So when we get closer to done, I'm going to put the last part of the cabbage in because I want that to be a nice green. And normally, however, and a lot of people like it that way, normally this doesn't cook for as long as I'm going to cook it, but I like it really, really tender and done. But it doesn't have the same appearance if you cook it for less time. So we're gonna add a little bit of cabbage at the end. It'll cook for only 45 minutes. At this point, I like to put in a stick of butter because butter makes everything better. We are at about the almost 3 hours and 45 minutes. I'm gonna put this last bit of cabbage in, and we're gonna cook that for about 20 minutes. This is now boiling because we've got to cook everything. And at this point, we're gonna add a little bit of pepper because we haven't put pepper in here yet. We've cooked everything now for an hour, and I've cooked the last bit of cabbage that I put in there for about 20 minutes. So it'll be done, and we're gonna go ahead and plate this, and then I've got the ladle because I like this with some of the juice. I am going to have a little bit of everything, and look at how that comes apart. Isn't that nice? You can't get, you gotta cook that. You gotta cook that 4 hours to get that. We'll have a couple of carrots. Put in the potato, and then you gotta have the juice. You've got to have the juice. Let's come here. Look at that. Look how good that looks. Isn't that nice? And then, of course, we're going to put a little bit of butter on this and a little bit of salt. Remember, I did not salt anything at this point. So we're going to put a little bit of, this is unsalted butter, and that looks nice. And I'm going to put a little bit of salt on everything. And have a look at that. Isn't that nice? Let's taste this. First, let's try the meat. Okay. Oh. It's tender. It's got just the right amount of salt at the end. Let's get a little bit of potato and that juice. Oh, that's good. Let's try a little bit of this cabbage. That's good. That's really good. Try this dish, and if you like it, subscribe and like, and I'll see you next time on Lawyer in the Kitchen.